I was just saying there's 6 of us and we get 30 minutes and it might be divisive. So I don't know how this is going to go, but we're going to do our best. My name is Ben, host of the BTC Sessions, and I'm just going to let us all kind of go down the line and say who we are and what we do. We'll start right next to me. Go ahead, Ben.
Thanks. My name is Roose. I'm a Bitcoin developer for a long time. Been at Blockstream at the Liquid team, working on Liquid, and currently working on ARC.
I'm Peter Todd. I'm enough of a Bitcoin dev that Craig Wright is suing me, although I haven't really done any work on Bitcoin Core for ages. And I'm also known for open timestamps.
My name is Sheinfeld. I'm the founder of Roose, and we're doing Lightning stuff, trying to promote Bitcoin to be used as a medium of exchange.
My name is John Carvalho. I'm CEO at Synonym and the BitKit products, and I mostly say agreeable things on Twitter.
I'm Paul. I work on Mutiny, which is a self-custodial Lightning wallet. I'm a front-end developer, though, so please don't ask me to write a C++.
Awesome. Okay, so the title of this chat is, I believe it's Scaling Bitcoin Layer 2 or Shitcoin. And I think there may be some strong opinions on the stage about that one way or the other. And so we're going to kind of dive into it. I guess my first question is how do we, maybe what we need to do is break down at what point a layer 2 is no longer a layer 2. How do you define what is a layer 2 of Bitcoin?
I mean, I like the definition that layer 2s are systems where, while you may not have access to your Bitcoin in the way that you would on an on-chain transaction, you do have recourse to either automatically get your funds back in some reactive security, or at very least go punish the other party in such a way that there's no incentive to take the money to begin with.
Is there?
That it actually uses Bitcoin.
Okay. All right. Is there, Roy, I'm curious here.
I have to take the devil advocate side.
Okay.
Everything is a layer 2. Okay. Yeah. Technically, yes.
Useful. That's a very useful definition.
All right. If I think so too. Like layer 2 is if you're using Bitcoin, if you have a recourse from a technical standpoint to get your money without the involvement of your third party or a peer, the same characteristic that Bitcoin have. But let's argue on definitions. Why not? By the way, we need to define to argue on what is a shitcoin. Let's define a shitcoin.
Yes. Before we dive into what is a shitcoin, is there such thing as a layer 2 on fiat?
Let's talk about what's a layer 2 on Bitcoin. Like I'm again taking the other side.
Yeah.
If you're using Bitcoin without using the chain or without the properties that Bitcoin, by the way, I mean, that's another discussion, but never mind. Every time you're engaging with Bitcoin off the chain, either using a custodial service, either using whatever wrap Bitcoin that you're using, but if you're being presented with a Bitcoin unit of account, you're using Bitcoin.
Layer 2 is, or fiat is layer 2 at the base layer. It's always permission. So the beauty of Bitcoin is on the layer 1, if you have the keys, you control the funds. If you have enough funds to move, if it's not dust on the chain, you can move those funds. So everything else is layer 2. Like Starbucks gift card, you could think of as a layer 2. The nice thing that Bitcoin also, because of those layer 1 properties, you also have layer 2s where you still have that recourse, some way to reclaim the funds because of the power that you have on layer 1. But in fiat, if you're always serving as somebody else's permissions.
So I would go and very clearly say I do not consider Blockstream's Liquid to be a layer 2 because it has the property of being basically like a bank. Now, it's a more auditable bank than many, but the fundamental aspect is the collective federation can take your money. But I would make the point that this shows why in the fiat world, you absolutely could have a layer 2 in the same sense as Bitcoin, where if you assume that the layer 1 doesn't break, you absolutely could use Lightning on top of, government issued USD on a Bitcoin-like blockchain, you could do that.
Yeah.
And it would have all the same kind of properties of Lightning relative to the layer 1.
Yeah. Is Liquid layer 2?
Well, blockchain likes to call Liquid layer 2. I agree with you need to have unilateral exit definition. So I don't think as Liquid as layer 2. I think of it as a sidechain, and I don't think sidechains are layer 2s. They're interesting on themselves. They're different things that can help with scaling, but I wouldn't call them layer 2s. If I hear people say banks can be layer 2s, then Liquid is a layer 2. But
what's the difference between a sidechain and a shitcoin?
The coin. Sidechains use Bitcoin denomination, right? So they are.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right, let's get into the shitcoin talk. There's right now the main issue of contention, John. Like you're basically saying the ability to you have keys, you have recourse with keys, you have direct access to on-chain, even if you're not using on-chain in that moment. You have the key to the on-chain Bitcoin that's being utilized in that Lightning channel, for instance. So that's kind of where your line is at. Now, can something not be defined as a layer 2 in your sense, but still to a degree not be a shitcoin?
So you're asking, can there be layer 2s on Bitcoin that are shitcoins?
No, I'm asking the opposite. If you're saying Liquid is not a layer 2, you're saying it's something else. It's an abstraction in which you do not have keys to on-chain Bitcoin yourself. Does that inherently, in your eyes, make it a shitcoin, or is it just not layer 2, but it's something else?
Well, I don't know how everybody would define shitcoin. There's probably
let's do that.
Nuance there too, but the issue is basically that in Liquid, it's just like any other altcoin, right? The difference is that there is an authority to be able. There's a permission gate before to acquire that coin, the Liquid coin, right? And that authority will only accept Bitcoin to convert it into their coin. So they sell their shitcoin for Bitcoin at the Bitcoin rate, and they enforce stability. They provide it as a service, basically. And so the issue there is just like, it's not actually Bitcoin, of course. You have no unilateral exit, no credible exit. You just have a promise that not only they let you out when you want out, but they'll even give you the same rate on the way out. Because they could decide to give you, oh, we have fees now. You get 95% of your Bitcoin when you withdraw. There's no actual Bitcoin, and they hold it for you, but the blockchain isn't made out of it.
Yeah. So again, to draw a parallel, and anybody can jump in here, but to draw a parallel, you're using credit cards and debit cards and things like that. That's not the physical cash, and of course, that's built on top of the central bank promises that in and of themselves were the base shitcoin. With layers of shitcoin on top of that. But like in the sense of like dollars versus an abstraction of other dollars in other systems, where do we differentiate? Like where do we draw that line of, is it a shitcoin still, like in that sense?
Well, I mean, you saying shitcoin very clearly implies value proposition there. And I'd say a more neutral way to go look at this is something like Liquid is meant to be denominated in Bitcoin, ignoring, of course, the fact that Liquid also supports assets on top of that. Sticking purely to the discussion of Liquid BTC, it's meant to be denominated in Bitcoin. That promise may or may not play out the way it's supposed to, but the important thing is that the ways it can go fail is due to the fact that they're the ones with the keys to the actual Bitcoin. On the other hand, if you're comparing this to something like Monero, Monero, there are ways Monero could fail. But those ways are entirely related to Monero's market adoption, the general value of Monero, technical failures, and so on. They've got nothing to do with this kind of Liquid model. So equally, when you look at normal, regular fiat things, they tend to have the property that there's no real auditability because there's no blockchain. Fiat ends up being just layers and layers and layers of systems on top of systems on top of systems with loose auditing. And it's just a very different world than anything we go talk about, be it, Bitcoin, Liquid, Ethereum, Monero, whatever.
Just to motivate this conversation a little bit, Bitcoin on chain is awesome. Like, so why are we talking about shitcoins? Why are we talking about layer 2? Let's just use Bitcoin on chain. Well, that's expensive and there's limited block space. Lightning is awesome and it greatly increases the transaction throughput of Bitcoin with almost all the same properties of self-custody and that unilateral exit. But if you do the math on Lightning, if you got 8 billion people in the world, if everybody's opening a Lightning channel, you're going to have, like, John Cantrell has this really awesome Twitter thread on this. Take about 18 years to get everybody a Lightning channel, just of full blocks of just Lightning channel opens. So there's ways that we can improve that, but we're basically searching for ways to how do we bring as many of the properties that we like of Bitcoin, of self-custody, unilateral exit, controlling your own funds, while scaling to 8 billion people.
Now, the way that Roy and John, the way that you guys are looking at Lightning seems to be a little bit different from how Mutiny is potentially approaching it in certain aspects. Maybe do we want to...
We're big fans of Fediment right now.
Yeah. Okay. So, like, I already know John's opinion here, but we'll hear in a moment. But can you kind of describe, the reason you're going that route and just maybe like a Cliff's Note, how is this working?
Yeah, Fediment has a very similar trust model to something like Liquid, but you're choosing a federation. There's a federation here, Bitcoin Atlantis Federation. You scan that QR code with the Fedi app or with Mutiny. You can be part of this, a member of this federation. Who are the guardians of the federation? That's really important because you're not trusting one individual to hold your funds, but you're trusting this you can almost like a collaborative custody. So there's all these great properties of Fediment. There's a lot of great privacy, and it interoperates really well with Lightning. So you can pay a Lightning invoice. You can buy, some brownie or local, buy a nada, the local little tart thing here. You can pay money with Fediment. It's working great right now, but is a little bit like a shitcoin. Like they're issuing a token. It's denominated in Bitcoin, but they're issuing an eCash that you hope will be redeemable for Bitcoin, but there is a risk there, and that's why it's very important that you can trust that federation.
So why did Mutiny take the approach that this is necessary? Basically because of what you said, 18 years to onboard people to Lightning. But John, it seems you don't lean into that reasoning. You don't believe that something like Fedimints would be necessary to make Lightning feasible and onboarding people to Bitcoin without Lightning?
It gets really nuanced or messy. Like, there's a line, right? It's either Bitcoin that you control or have some ability to take control of without somebody giving you permission, or it's in custody. Bitcoin in custody loses all of its qualities. Like, there's no argument there. And so whenever you start talking about basically banking technology in the context of Bitcoin, you're still talking about banking technology. So I'm not disinterested in credit as a form of currency. I think it is very interesting. We're owned by Tether. You know what I mean? Like that's for a reason, because I have interest in credit. I just think that the proper way to do it is to have the relationship be with the creditor. And so something more like a gift card in the fiat world is more appropriate. In other words, all that matters in trust is who you trust. The technology is just a secondary afterthought that most people don't even care about. It just matters who you trust.
I see Roy nodding. You can chime in.
The problem with these panels is, and assigning John to and I to the same panel, is that we always agree. But I want kind of to not to have the technological discussion on what's Fediment. Let's first kind of explain why we need Fediment. And I do agree that we need something for the last mile. So the mental model that I have these days is that you need to think about the Bitcoin blockchain as the railways, kind of. Think about the Bitcoin chain as the trains that move high value transaction, but it costs a lot of money to get a train ticket. It takes time. Trains are slower than other vehicles. You can't really lay out the grounds for new railways just as easy as you do for roads and highways. Lightning enable us to build highways, meaning spread Bitcoin to more people through highways, roads. Now we can argue if there are single lane roads or multi-lane roads, but we don't have the roads yet, and we argue what we will use in order to get inside the village. If we'll use a bicycle or we use whatever, or we'll walk. I don't know. I don't care because we don't have the roads yet. So let's build the roads. I think we can scale with the roads to a 2, 3, maybe 4, I'm not sure, order of magnitude. And then we'll see. The technology will evolve. Fedimin or cashew or whatever, that's kind of maybe we'll need a last mile. I don't know yet, but it's not a real world problem right now, I think.
It feels kind of like a real world problem to me. Like Venmo and Cash App, like paid people $5 to use their app, and you start with zero balance.
It's a fiat mindset, though.
With a Lightning channel, you want like minimum 100,000 sats. So right now that's $60. Plus, depending on the mempool, maybe you're spending like $5 for the channel open. Like that's a pretty aggressive thing to say to somebody. Like this is going to be your first experience with Bitcoin.
It's a feature, not a bug. Meaning, we need to understand that Lightning is a better way to use the chain. It's not a magical solution that will obfuscate all the complexities of Bitcoin from users. It's for users that would have used the chain regardless of Lightning. But they will use the chain more effectively if they kind of agree with the new trust model that Lightning brings to the world. And if that's the case, then we can reach and scale or optimize the transactions that are being executed on the chain. There's no problem of value transfer in the Bitcoin blockchain right now. In 2022, we transferred $39 trillion of money in the Bitcoin blockchain. So yes, it's not for zaps. That's not the right use case for Bitcoin. They shouldn't use Bitcoin. Then if we connect Bitcoin, when I say I don't like the distinction between Bitcoin Lightning, because Lightning is Bitcoin. When you do a Lightning transaction, it is a Bitcoin transaction. But maybe we'll need to use like a last mile technology for kind of spreading Bitcoin inside the village. Yes, we will probably will.
I mean, I think the odd thing, though, about the way the discussion is played out is it's kind of sounding as though that on-chain Lightning, where you have your own channel and these other solutions are kind of a separate thing, and I don't know that's your intent, but I think that's the way this discussion is played out. When, I think a better way to go look at it is just the economics of Lightning. Mean, if you wish to, you can go use something like Wallet of Satoshi, which is very cheap but has trade-off of trust. You could use something like Fedimint or Cashew or whatever. There's a bunch of different solutions. They have different trade-offs. But what it gets down to is you make trade-offs. And if you want to go and be completely self-sovereign, well, you go pay a bit of money for that, and you could do that. And that is your choice, in much the same way as that, if you want to go hold cash in your home, you can decide how secure it is and how much money you want to go spend on your vault. Do you store it in a shoebox under your bed? Or do you spend $10,000 on a big vault that's concrete into your floor? I mean, they're just trade-offs. You could spend $10,000, store $100. Doesn't really make much sense, but you could do that. No one's stopping you. Much the same way as you can open a Lightning channel for, 10,000 sats, and it kind of looks a little silly to do it, but you could. Or you could open a Lightning channel for a very large amount of money. And at that point, well, it's very cheap. I mean, it's just what trade-offs you want to go make.
Let's give Steve an assist. Is Arc a layer 2?
Yeah, I think Arc's a layer 2. We were derailing so much getting into shitcoins.
I agree. Arc is a layer 2.
Yeah, Arc follows the definition of layer 2s, but what I was wanting to add is that we're going from, do we use layer 2 or do we use trust? But I think there's so much more things that we can do with layer 2s. Like we really want the layer 2s, and I think the fact that we're using Liquid or we're using Fede is because the layer 2s are not what we want. They're not there yet. They're not fully the way we want them. And I think Arc can be another entire layer 2, which is using a totally different use case model, UX model, than Lightning is. So it solves some of the problems of Lightning. It has some other problems with regards to the unilateral exit. But I think if we if we think more broader in terms of other layer twos that we can use, we can like, I don't know, shift the balance more like away from the custodial model and try to get more people onto the layer twos.
I mean, I'd make the point that all of this stuff is just a set of like tech trade-offs and what's possible to implement. Again, with example, Wallet of Satoshi versus something like Fedimint. Wallet of Satoshi gets to market quick, and because they don't do any auditing. I mean, it's a very similar relationship to a bank, but with this magical property that you can also send something to people in a very secure way. And then at the other extreme, something like Arc, especially when you talk about Lightning on top of Arc, you've got enormous amount of technical complexity to achieve something that if it all works, it's great. But someone has to actually write that code and grind through that, and it's going to take a while.
Yeah, I think something I wanted to add is you said you can use the chain if you want. You're just going to pay a little bit extra. But I think one of the problems with Bitcoin is the cost is always fixed. Like someone who has only $100 or $1,000 is going to have to pay the same fee as someone who has $1 million. And that's not fair. So not for most people, they can't.
Why isn't that fair?
Well, for most people, they cannot make the choice that you said. You can't choose to pay the on-chain fee, but many people can't, especially not if everyone wants to, right? So we need...
It's not fair that we could all go fly here and, half the population could barely feed themselves.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm sure you're in favor of freedom. And you said you can't choose to pay the on-chain fee to transact in Bitcoin, but no, you can. Like you can, but many people can't. Right? We
all make economic trade-offs. Bitcoin gives everyone an equal opportunity to make an economic trade-off. Life isn't fair, but
sure.
Bitcoin
but yours
doesn't care who you are. It cares what you can pay.
Sure, but you're framing it as is there's no problem right now. It's all about choices, and it's all about what you want and how you decide to use Bitcoin. But that's not the case. Like Bitcoin's not usable right now for the vast majority of the world to use it as a payment system, right? So like it's not about choices. It's about we need to improve the usability for the masses because right now it's not there.
I agree, but it's not about the end users. Let's be honest. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, okay? The elephant in the room that no one talks about is the fact that this solution, this non-custodial solution, need to be developed because we want to allow people to transact on an alternative system. So people are okay. Like I've been doing that for the past 6 years. People are okay with the trusting Wallet of Satoshi. That's not the problem. The problem is that Wallet of Satoshi pulled from the United States, and no one in the United States can now use Wallet of Satoshi. So the trust model is not a problem. What we're doing, all of us, effectively, is building a way to transfer money in a non-custodial fashion because we want to create an alternative monetary system without the regulatory system kind of understanding what we're doing.
I'm not sure I would agree. I don't think there's anyone keeping their savings on Wallet of Satoshi. Like it's a tool, it's like a debit card, it's like a payment card, but none of us are actually keeping their savings in Wallet of Satoshi. And the ones of us that are keeping our savings in Bitcoin are using tools that not everyone can use to keep their savings in, right?
That you just shifted the discussion to savings, and I was talking payments. That's not the same.
Well, we're talking money, no? Money has two sides.
If we want, 20 billion, 8 billion, whatever number you want to go pick, people to go use Bitcoin, the moment you go talk about keeping their savings, you're kind of also implying that they have UTXOs, which I think gets immediately back to the scaling issue. So you would expect in very wide adoption people to go keep all their savings on a very small number of wallets. Many, not everyone, because of course some people could pay extra, but whatever, but many people do that. So yeah, in that regard, I'd say things like Wallet of Satoshi are very scary, and I'm very happy that things like Fedimint are getting developed, or at least there will likely be many different custodians. They're not going to all fail at once.
I just wanted to add a little bit on the complexity topic that was mentioned a couple of times, which is like, as I understand it, like things like Mutiny are you'd mentioned using Fedimint with Lightning. And
yeah, you can swap to a Lightning channel from your Fedimint balance.
Right. And the issue with this is that every time you make a mint, it's a new asset. It's not actually Bitcoin, just like Liquid isn't actually Bitcoin. And no mint is interoperable with another mint because it's two separate assets, two separate ledgers. And so they're going to rely on, at the moment, at least as I understand, Lightning as rails between this. But as Peter mentioned, the complexity of Lightning combined with something like Arc or combined with something like Fedimint Now you're starting to daisy chain these things. The user experience becomes very fragile, and it becomes very difficult to actually deliver that without actually owning the whole stack, like a company like Async or such.
I can't agree that much. I don't think Fediment is something that makes Lightning that much more complex. Fediment itself is a pretty robust, reliable thing, modulo the fact that it involves custodians. Lightning, because of the economic realities of channels, certainly has a higher failure rate. In Arc, if it works properly, you could probably get it to a point where it's fairly simple. It's just going to take a very long time to get through all these cases because it's just a very complex protocol.
I do want to say I do like the framing in and around each mint would be a separate asset, given that it's obviously not actually Bitcoin. It's a token pegged to Bitcoin, and the hope is that all of those separate assets all independently maintain that peg. But that doesn't mean that's necessarily going to be true if there's a rug pull on behalf of one of the mints, correct?
Well, it really just depends on the mint. But I think the interoperability of Lightning has been really awesome. The fact that like my SQL database coin in Wallet of Satoshi interops with my Fediment coin, interops with my actual Lightning channel on my Umbral node, like that conduit is really exciting. I would like to see shitcoins add pay to Lightning. Like there's no reason not to it. It's becoming this shared user interface, and so you can have a bit of a spectrum.
But what you're describing is just a conversion service that scales into exchanges and banks. And we had that already. Like the whole point of Bitcoin is to get away from that system. If we're just going to recreate it in reverse, then we're not actually accomplishing anything. Like one topic we're all avoiding here again is that the issue here is scaling. And so how you define scaling, what kind of scaling you think is okay, these kinds of things. And that's where the separation is. You're either scaling Bitcoin or you're scaling banking. There's not a spectrum in between them.
I think there's a spectrum. Banking has a spectrum. Something like
it's too separate.
Yeah, I think there's a spectrum. Something like Fediment is somewhere on that spectrum of banking between, on-chain Bitcoin, Lightning, Fediment, Wallet Satoshi's there. In actual normal banking is like way over here because all the KYC, AML, and regulations. These things all have spectrums with different trade-offs.
My PayPal bucks and my Cash App bucks and my Starbucks gift card bucks, those are all like kind of stranded in islands. My Wallet of Satoshi bucks have a similar trust model, but they're interoperable with my self-custodial Lightning bucks.
They're not interoperable. You simply run a service to bridge them. And your gift card could do the same thing if they wanted to. This is not a technology thing. It's a trust service.
But if we agree on what Roy said, like if we all agree that Lightning is solid and it's safe and it's a good layer 2, and we can actually use Lightning to use the chain. He said like people that want to use the chain can use Lightning as if like they were doing the things they want to do on the chain and they can. Then things like Fedi and things like Lightning to Arc are just another layer. Like you're using the network like as if you would be using the chain, and you're just using something that makes it easier or cheaper for you to use the network, right? And then the Lightning network is just a payment. It's just the routing network. And it's not like banking because it's trustless. Like it has similar security properties as Bitcoin. So even if you're doing custodial things on the edges, you're still using the solid payment network. And it's better than having a trust-based payment network.
I mean, I guess it gets messy because you're just saying if I use multiple things together, it's interoperability. Like if you support multiple things.
But like if you have 5 different wallets and they can all send Bitcoin, they're interoperable because they send over the Bitcoin network. If you have 5 different wallets and they can all send Lightning to each other, they're interoperable because they send over the Lightning network.
Right, but this is your bank integrating with Bitcoin. It's not providing scale.
But if your bank integrates with Lightning payments, yeah, it has added to the interoperability of Bitcoin.
So is a bank a Bitcoin layer?
Well,
that's what Fedi is, right? That's exactly what Fedi is.
This is why I called out the idea of layer 2 as I refer to it in terms of the underlying sort of game theory of the tech. From the point of view of a user, though, can your bank offer a Bitcoin wallet? The answer is yes. Of course they can. They can both denominate in Bitcoin or even have a service where you can turn your USDT into a Lightning payment instantly. They're probably not going to do that for regulatory reasons in a lot of places, but it's the kind of discussion that Bitcoin could go change. Maybe in 10 years in the US, it is common for banking apps to have Lightning payments.
Well, this is what Strike is, and Cash App does this. It exists now.
We're getting down to the end of our time here, but I just want to... I'm going to talk from a bit of my perspective. And what I'm hearing here is differentiations of we hope to get there. We're in the process of building it, and we should wait until kind of we build out the proper tools, and then iterations of, but people are already trying to use this in a way that it's not yet prepared for. This is what I'm currently, I've been living on Bitcoin for 4 years. And so I've had to make decisions in and around day-to-day spending, how I'm going to save, how I'm going to kind of in between pay my bills every single month. And so for me, that's been kind of a mix of on-chain for savings or for larger transactions, Lightning self-custodially, hopefully in most instances, but at times using things like Liquid, at times using things like, you know, if I hadn't already had enough Bitcoin to be affording onboarding and setting up channels and stuff, I may be very inclined to use something like a Fediment on Mutiny as opposed to a wallet of Satoshi because it's slightly less prone to rug pulls. But what I'm getting at is there are certain people that right now, maybe preemptively, are using Bitcoin in a way that obviously the whole world isn't quite ready and primed for, depending on how economically viable it is for that individual.
100%. But what's wrong with that? Like, I don't think Wallet of Satoshi is wrong. I don't think the services that Blink are developing are wrong. It's good. We're providing tools. We're providing options. People need to understand the trust model. People need to understand what they're doing with their funds, with their money, and it's good.
Yeah. We do have to wrap. I'm going to give you each a quick 15 seconds, and then we're going to wrap.
I love Fediment as scaling for real users right now. I also think there's a ton of stuff that we can do to make it cheaper to do Lightning, so we can get more Lightning channels, more people with that really great property of unilateral exit and self-custody, whether that takes soft forks or whatever. I want to be really open to scaling that because I think that's such a beautiful system. But for now, Fediment's really going to solve a lot of problems, I think.
John?
One reason I'm a stickler about the semantics on this and why I draw hard lines is, this is just one reason, is that I do feel it corrupts the culture of research. And so basically what happens is you get a whole swath of people that start funding and researching and building tools and products around something like, say, eCash, and we don't know there's just going to be a trend, and that trend and what effect that trend might have, and that we don't know what would be worked on and researched and invested in if the attitude was more similar to what I'm recommending.
So you're making sure that the Overton window stays shifted in the direction.
Yeah, like we still have concerns like, what do we do when like the price fee for paying on chain is so exclusive that most of the people in this room can't afford Bitcoin anymore? Then what are we going to do?
Everybody, let's give a round of applause to the panel. Thank you guys very much. Have a great rest of the day.